Alright, how's it going everyone? It is Blake here from chesspathways.com, and we're continuing on with our Roadmap to Master series today. This is video number 2, called Beating the Beginners. So hopefully you've watched the first video in the series about getting started in chess. If not, I'm going to put that link down in the description. And now in this video, we're going to talk about how to kind of elevate yourself from there and get to the point where you're beating most beginners and you're kind of in this intermediate player range. If we look at our rating scale here, hopefully you're at around this 500 mark if you've watched this first video. And by the end of this video, if you put this stuff into practice, this should get you up to the 1000 to 1200 range right here. Alright, so what does it take to go from a beginner to someone who can consistently beat beginners? Let's talk about the 4 main objectives we're going to cover in this video. Number 1, tactical training. In that first video, we hit on the very fundamentals of tactics. That's hanging pieces, counting, those very basic elements. To get past the beginner stage in chess, you're going to have to learn more tactical elements and put them into practice and get pretty consistent with them. And we're going to talk about how to do that. Secondly, the move-by-move thought process of chess. This is important because a lot of players, when they're training their tactics, they can see their 2-move combinations when they're doing tactics puzzle after tactics puzzle, but in a real game, it's a little different, right? No one's holding up a sign for you saying, checkmate in 2 moves, can you find it? Or, do you see how you can win a piece here? You have to find it yourself, and you also have to guard against letting your opponent win your pieces or deliver checkmate to your king. Number 3, technique. And when we say technique in chess, we're actually talking about something pretty specific. When we say, the rest is just a matter of technique, you'll see that annotation given a lot in chess books and chess videos and things like that. What we're saying is the position's already winning for one player, and the rest is just kind of a matter of converting that advantage into a win. So we're really talking about converting your advantage into a win when we're talking about technique, and that's a big skill to have. And that's actually a huge skill to develop all throughout your chess career, but let's start with the very basics. I'm going to show you how you can start mastering this skill so you can convert winning positions into wins almost every time. That should be your goal. And then finally, opening essentials. You know that every chess game starts with the same position. It makes sense to start learning a little bit about that position so you can get off to a good start in every chess game you ever play. Alright, let's get started with tactical training. So in the previous video, I showed you how to use online tactics trainers, and those are going to be a very valuable tool for you all throughout your chess career. So definitely make sure you're setting up some time, ideally, let's say half an hour a day if you have the time. If you can't commit that much time, that's fine. Maybe half an hour, 2 times a week, 3 times a week is fine too. But be consistent at it. Use that tool to your advantage and make sure you're getting practice with your tactical abilities consistently. Like I said, a lot of those tools can adjust to your skill level. If you get a lot of harder problems wrong, it'll give you easier ones that might match where you are right now. And basically, you're just looking for the solution to those puzzles, either delivering a checkmate, or it might be a combination that wins material for you. But you're really going to get some good practice in for your calculation ability by using these tools. So we talked about the very basics of tactics, the hanging pieces, don't put your pieces on squares where they can be taken. And vice versa, if your opponent does so, then take their pieces, of course. We talked about counting your attackers and defenders. I showed you where to find information on that. There's some more tactical elements you have to master to get past this beginner stage, though. So we're talking about forks, pins, skewers, discovered attack, discovered check, back rank mate, and other mating patterns. And finally, combining these elements into what we call combinations. That's a lot of what you're going to get practice in by using these tactics trainers. Now, as you know, this series is kind of a high-level overview for what you have to do to improve at chess, so I don't want to get into all the nuts and bolts of what these things mean in this video. I will show you where to find that information. Just Googling any of these terms will be helpful for you. I also have a tactical training video myself. I'll put that down in the description. I recommended watching the first part of it in the first video in this series. I'm going to recommend watching the rest of it for this stage. But really, what a lot of these tactics boil down to is attacking 2 pieces at once, right? Because as you get better in chess, it's not going to be very common for your opponent just to put a piece on a square where it's completely undefended and where it can be taken. That's not going to be a very common tactic you're going to see in real chess games. Where a lot of these tactics come in is where you can make 2 threats at the same time and your opponent can't stop both of them, and that's how you win material. And of course, almost as important, maybe even more important, is making sure that you stop your opponent from doing that to you, and you make sure you're aware of their possibilities, and you make sure they can't, fork you or pin you or basically attack 2 of your pieces at once, in a way that lets them win material. So like I said, I'll link you to a video covering a lot of this stuff. The big thing here is getting that practice in, using those tactics trainers as often as you can and getting this practice in. And now the big thing is that so many players forget to do, when you're doing your tactical training, when you're going through these puzzles, when you miss one, you have to make sure you understand why you missed it. Don't just accept that you got it wrong and move on to the next one. Try to understand the solution the computer is giving, and if you don't understand why it's better than the move you chose, then you have to get help. You have to ask someone, what's going on here? What am I not understanding? That's the only way you're going to get better. There's so many chess forums and communities out there. There's Reddit, there's forums on chess.com, Lichess, all these websites. There's sites like mine. You can always email me, Blake at chesspathways.com if you're a Chess Pathways member. I'm happy to help point you in the right direction. But get help. Don't just get something wrong and then not understand why. That's really one of the huge cornerstones of your chess development, is being curious and always looking for more information when you don't understand something. Okay, so that's tactical training. The second element, again, that move-by-move thought process, because you can do this training, but putting it into practice when you're playing real games is another matter. Now, this is going to be best practiced in long time control games, which is not something a lot of players online like to do, and I think that's a shame. There's so many players online who only play, blitz chess, 3-minute games, 5-minute games, even 10-minute games, and they think 10-minute games are long, but no, that's still blitz chess. If an average game is, let's say, 40 moves, and you have to make all your moves in 10 minutes, then what is that? That's 600 seconds, 40 moves. That's only 15 seconds per move on average. Do you think that's enough time to really practice getting in this habit of having a good thought process behind every move you play? Probably not. So what I would recommend is 2 to 3 times a week, try to play chess games with at least 30 minutes of clock time for each player. These longer time control games, where you're going to have time to practice your thought process. Now, if you can't set aside, 1-hour blocks for chess, that's okay. You could also try playing what we call correspondence games, or some websites call them daily games, where you basically have a whole day or more to make each move, so you're going to have at least, 5 minutes every day to sit down and think about what move to play that day. I don't think that's really my first option, because it's kind of discontinuous. You kind of lose your train of thought. These games can stretch out over the course of several weeks or even several months. But I think it's a better alternative than playing speed chess. This isn't really the point in your chess development to play speed chess. You want to play longer time controls when you have plenty of time to think about each move, so you can practice this thought process. Now, where can you go to learn about what this thought process is, so you can try to put it into practice? Well, there's many resources out there. I've actually written a guide on this. I call it my move-by-move guide to chess thinking, and it's totally free. All you have to do is go to chesspathways.com and sign up, and I will immediately send you that guide for free. But one of the things it boils down to is just always asking, what will my opponent play before making any move? That's one of the biggest recommendations I can give you. Another one is to always consider what checks, captures, and threats you can make every turn, and then as you consider them, again, ask what your opponent would do in response to each one to try to evaluate if it's a good move or a bad move. So those are a couple helpful tips. Again, if you want the full guide, just sign up on chesspathways.com, only takes 5 seconds, and I will send you that guide. Okay, number 3, technique. So, like I said, this is a big one, because if you're practicing your tactics and your thought process, then ideally what's going to happen is you're going to get these positions against beginners where you have a material advantage, right? You've taken more of their pieces than they've taken from you because you have superior tactics and a superior thought process, and now you're going to have to learn how to convert these better positions into wins. So there's a couple ways to get practice with this. One is, if you ever play a game and you were up material, you had taken more pieces than your opponent had taken from you, but then you didn't go on to win the game, like I said in the first video, you have to go back and try to understand why. And I talked about how to analyze your games and check your archive. I showed you on chess.com. You can just go to archive here and view the previous games you've played. But if you ever lose a game, especially if you were winning at some point, you have to understand what went wrong and try to fix it. And what you can do is you can take the position where you were winning, just take some position where you had more pieces than your opponent, set it up in an analysis board against a computer, and just play it out against the computer until you can beat the computer with it. That's one thing you can do, and just play it out until you make sure you can win that position every time. Another thing you can do, if you don't want to base it on a game you've played, you can just come here to the analysis board on chess.com or any chess website or any software you have where you can play against a computer, and do this yourself, what you can do is just set up a position where you're winning and then try to practice playing it out against a computer. So for example here, we can just go to setup. Let's go ahead and just clear this board and just set up some kind of position like this where, okay, both sides have, some pawns here. We'll just say each side has maybe 6 pawns left, just in some kind of random configuration. And maybe both players have a couple rooks. Let's say white has 2 rooks left. That's pretty normal. Black has a couple rooks. But then white is up a knight. And just practice playing out a position like this, where you have an extra knight. This should be completely winning for white. Practice playing a position like this against a computer again and again until you can win this with white every time. And if this is too hard, you can start simpler. Maybe start without rooks on the board. Just practice winning a position like this with your extra knight. And it should make sense how you're going to do it, right? You don't try to deliver checkmate with the knight. That would be kind of hard. But you're just going to be able to win pawns much easier than your opponent can because you have a knight, and then you can go make a queen. And if you practiced your queen and king versus king checkmates from that first video in this series, you should be good to go. Another big part of technique for beginners is avoiding stalemates, right? If you watched my first video in the series, you know the rules of chess, you know to avoid those stalemates. So whenever you're winning and you have a position where your opponent only has the bare king left, or when they don't have any pawns that can move, and there's that danger of stalemating the king, you always, again, have to ask every turn, if I make this move, what can my opponent do? Kind of tying back into what we talked about in the thought process objective, always asking that question is going to help you avoid stalemates. Because if you're about to make a move, and you ask, what's my opponent about to do? Oh, they can't do anything, it's stalemate. Well, now you know not to play that move. But so many players forget to ask that fundamental question. And then finally, the fourth objective to getting past this beginner stage is having that fundamental understanding of chess opening play. So let's hop over to a clean chessboard here and talk about the opening. So we all know that in chess, it's important to have a plan, right? That's one of the first things people think of when they think of chess. It's a game of planning. But sometimes it can be hard to come up with a plan. Even for me, even for masters, international masters, grandmasters, it's not always easy to have a plan in chess. But the good news is this position right here will occur in every chess game you ever play. So if you can learn what plan to implement in this position, you're going to be off to a good start in every chess game you play. Now, there's so many videos out there talking about fundamental principles of the opening. I can just briefly cover the top 3, where you want to control the center, you want to develop your pieces, all of your pieces start here on the back rank, you're not going to win many games if they stay there, and you want to castle early on and get your king to safety. So that's an oversimplification of what your plan is in the opening. Again, there's videos that go more in depth on this. I'm going to go ahead and put some links in the description for you to give you some additional resources with this, talking about some more opening principles, and talking about some specific openings you can start learning the fundamentals of to help get you started with your opening preparation. One other recommendation I would make, if you're a beginner, or if you're at this, sub 1200 level, I would recommend starting every chess game you have with white with pawn to e4, the king's pawn opening. We see that this controls central space, opens lines for the pieces, and you might wonder why I recommend this over pawn to d4, which is also a popular and good move. But I like playing e4 more at this level because it leads to more tactical games. This e-pawn's not defended, as opposed to the d-pawn which is defended. And if we imagine our opponent plays e5, which is a very popular move, there's going to be more tactics earlier on because these pawns aren't defended. For example, there's some lines where white immediately threatens this pawn, black defends it. We already see some counting going on. White has one attacker, black has one defender, so white can't take that pawn yet. White often plays bishop to b5 here, not only developing a piece and getting ready to castle, but also thinking about removing this defender of the pawn later on, possibly winning a pawn. So there's all these tactics that occur early on, and because tactical training is the #1 thing you have to work on to get past this level, I would want to play an opening that emphasizes this and leads to more tactics earlier on. So my recommendation would be to open with pawn to e4 until you get to this 1200 level at least. Okay, a couple takeaways before we wrap this up. #1, manage your expectations here with regards to how fast you're going to make progress. One of the things about this rating scale is that it becomes harder and harder to gain rating points the further along you get on this scale. So even though you might have accomplished everything in the first video in maybe a week, and gotten started playing chess online, got to that 500 mark, it's not going to be, just 1 week to go from 500 to 1200. I would expect to put this stuff into practice over the course of several weeks, maybe a couple months, and you're going to get there eventually if you stay consistent and keep making progress. Number 2, if you get stuck, you need to reach out and get help. Don't allow yourself to just stagnate. I run a chess site, chesspathways.com. Again, go ahead and sign up there. And if you ever run into trouble making progress in chess, just reach out to me. I'm happy to help. And finally, if you want to see how I went from being a beginner playing my first chess games online to being one of the top chess players in my state in just a couple years, go ahead and click the link in the description. I have a video course that's going to walk you through it called Pathway to Success. I have over 50 annotated tournament games for you where I'm going to be sharing my thoughts. Not only my thoughts on the games themselves, but what my takeaways were from those games so I could keep getting better. I'm going to talk about the improvement mindset that you need to keep getting better at chess. And I'm also going to be talking about the study material I was using, the books I was reading, everything I was doing between tournaments to make sure I was improving and ready for my next tournament. So if you want to see how I made quick progress in chess and how you can do the same thing, click that link. I'll give you a discount. Hope to see you in that course. Thanks everyone, and I will see you in the next video.